So my name is Dr. Kevin Gazzara. I am one senior partner here at Magna Leadership Solutions, and I'm so glad that we're able to spend the time with us today. Tim?
Great. My name is Tim Galusha, and I'm also with Magna, and we're very happy to build on the conversation we had about a month ago around the high cost of attrition, and now to talk about some strategies to avoid that.
Here's the agenda for our quick 30-minute webinar that we're doing and recording. First, we're going to just do a quick recap of what we did in the last webinar to set this up for you. And then Tim is going to launch into pre-hire improvement strategies, and then he'll throw it over to me to talk about post-hire improvement strategies. How can you improve level of motivation, engagement, and alignment of the people that you're hiring or the people that you have? And then we will close the session, for those of you that stay, with our top 5 recommendations of what you can do once you have the people. And then hopefully we'll have time for a Q&A. From our last webinar, we showed you our attrition calculator. And anyone that's interested in playing with this is at the bottom of the screen, and we also will send you a confirmation of this information once the webinar is completed. And this is a calculator that was developed by Magna Leadership and Viatech Global. We did this together, and it's available for anyone. It's free. And in the last webinar, we had one of our clients on here, and we walked them through what it would cost, and this was for a construction company with a program manager that's running teams at the different large construction sites. What they found was by putting 3 numbers in, they had about 75 program managers. They lost about 15% last year, and they're paying about $70,000. Just using their numbers, not ours, turned out to be about, we refined it a little bit, but around $20,000 to $25,000 per person. And the loss last year was just a little over $750,000. So that's the reason that we're bringing these tips and tricks to you, because we want to help you get better and leverage the types of things that we've done. All right, Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. So we saw that $750,000 in potential savings, and you certainly aren't able to capture all of that, but even a small amount for most companies would be meaningful. So let's think about from 3 of the strategies that you can use to make sure that you're bringing people on that are a good fit for the role. In the pre-hire phase, and when you're thinking about your talent acquisition strategies, first we have in the what most companies do. So this is a skills inventory with behavioral interviewing. We'll talk about this a little, but I think most people are familiar with trying to link some of the behaviors required by the job and then interviewing for those. And then the second is to be doing the same thing, not giving up anything you're already doing, but adding some assessments. And we'll see why that can be powerful in just a minute. A couple of the more popular are the DISC report, which talk about general characteristics and personalities of people. And then the driving forces, or what's commonly referred to as internal motivators, why we do things. And so understanding those can be helpful. And then finally, the job benchmarking, which is the most robust of the 3, which really takes a stronger look at what's required by the job and thinking about it from a prioritization standpoint and even a weighting standpoint, so that you're really clear about what kind of a person is going to be a good fit for the role. So let's just take a look at the first one, the good strategy. So, this is typically what happens is we have a job and we ask the hiring manager to say, well, what kind of a person do you need? And they list, oftentimes it's 8, sometimes 12, maybe even 15 different skills that the person needs. And then the HR department's tasked with developing behavioral interview questions for the recruiters to use. So fairly common to add this to the skills, experiences, education, certifications, the kinds of things we're always looking for when we're in the talent acquisition process. And some of the pros to this, pretty consistent. The recruiters get a list of questions to ask. It's pretty easy to train. There is a link to job requirements in terms of the behaviors required, and it's a traditional approach. Most people are comfortable with it. Some of the downside is it's not particularly effective. Most of the time the hiring manager has that 8, 12, even more job requirements, which is hard to interview for. And most people don't come wired with all 12. Even more important is candidates know what you're looking for. They've read the job description. And so they're all ready to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And sometimes you end up hiring great storytellers as opposed to people that really have the skill. And I think most folks would say, hey, it's kind of a 50-50 shot as to whether this person that we're hiring is going to work out. So what's something else that you can do in the better approach is you can add an assessment. So in this case, we'll just look at the DISC report around general characteristics and personality preferences. So perhaps you've interviewed that candidate and you had some behavioral-based questions around, let's say, consistency and analysis, because you need somebody that can do something over and over the same way and has some high analytical skills. And you think, wow, I think I have a good candidate. And then we do the assessment. And then we get back this behavioral hierarchy. And let me just take a minute to tell you how to read this chart. In this case, we see on the bottom, this under the red line, this 53 number. And that's just for the general population. So in terms of people enjoying doing analytical work, being pre-wired to do analytical work, about 53% of the population comes that way. And we can see one standard deviation is the red line. And so somewhere just south of 30 and maybe just south of 80 in terms of scores would say that's what the general population comes pre-wired in terms of the ability and enjoyment of doing analytical work. But this particular candidate's coming in at a big 15, which means they don't really like to do analytical work. It isn't like them at all. And if my job requires it, I'm going to be asking them to come to work today and do something they don't like to do, a day in and day out. A similar story with consistency, right? The general population scores somewhere around 61, but my candidate only scored 12. That means there's probably a lot better candidates out there in terms of the ability to do consistent work and the ability to do analytical work. So they might have been a good storyteller. They might have convinced me that they are the right candidate. But when I added the behavioral assessment, I had a new data point that was very helpful in saying, maybe I don't have the right candidate. And then the third is to add job benchmarking. And some people might not be familiar with that. Job benchmarking is a process of really letting the job speak and really saying what's required by the job. It's more robust than asking the hiring manager for a list of job requirements. It's a facilitated process where we typically end up with about 4 key accountabilities that we prioritize and weight so we really know what the person will be doing each and every day. Here's an example for a claims supervisor of a couple of key accountabilities where when we're really looking for what's important, it's these couple of things. It's not 8 or 12 things, which are awful hard to interview for and particularly hard to do behavioral assessments for. So just a little story. When I first was introduced to job benchmarking, I was the vice president of HR for an organization that had a lot of claims supervisors. And we thought we knew what we needed in claims supervisors. We thought we needed people that were highly empathetic and delivered great customer service. Right? So they would deliver that experience that the people calling in with claims wanted. Unfortunately, when we actually did benchmarking, we found we were pretty much dead wrong. That the people that were highly empathetic were exhausted by the end of the day in talking to people that were sick, had big problems, had elder care issues. That highly empathetic person just said, wow, that was so tough. And then we asked them to do that each and every day. And then the other was the customer service, which they had great conversations, but we needed them to be talking to 12 to 15 people a day. And because these conversations were so great, they were only talking to 8 or 10. And so not only were they going home exhausted, but we were only getting about half the work done that was needed. What we found is we needed people that were high theoretical. This was a hard job to learn. It takes about a year to fully master. There's just tons of learning. And so if you don't like to learn, probably isn't a great job for you. And so by understanding that we needed people like that and then evaluating the candidates, you had this nice data point where I could see I've got some people that love to learn, and then maybe somebody that's not so inclined to hit the books and learn what's required to be a claims examiner. And then the other thing we learned is they had to be competitive. They just had to want to make every claim adjudication perfect. They wanted to take every claim and it should be done properly, and if it needs to be approved and the person get their money, that it's done quickly, it's done properly. And in this case, I now have a couple of data points where I have some people that really hit it out of the park when it comes to competitiveness. And then I have some people that score a little bit lower. So by adding, a robust look at what was required and then doing an assessment of candidates, I have some really important data to add to education I was looking for, the experience I was looking for, certifications I might have wanted, all the other things that go into talent acquisition. I've now added this at much less the cost of losing even one person. So on the pre-side, here are 3 things that you can do in terms of good, better, best to give you some additional data to try and make sure you're hiring people that are a great fit for your role. And so you don't lose them in even the first year of employment, after you've invested so much in their training and onboarding into the organization.
And tell us, what was the result of actually doing this with, I don't know how many people did you use this for your hiring? How did it work for getting better hires, and did it make a difference to the people that were managing the new people you were bringing in?
Yeah, managers instantly said, where are you getting these people? We've been hiring, and we hired hundreds of claims examiners a year. Where are you getting these people? They're so much better. They just fit right in. We also used it for the call center, and just in the first year, we saw a 30% decrease in attrition in the call center. So we had pretty much instantaneous results by moving to job benchmarking, and it was a relatively painless process. Something that people might want to look into if high attrition is something that's costing them a lot of money.
I want to jump into the kind of the post-hire, and I know just to keep this on time, I have enough time for Q&A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about our leadership strategy and kind of what we've seen that has really helped organizations. And our leadership strategy is quite simple, is that if you create an environment and a culture of continuous learning, engagement, and accountability, you can get the better hires that you have to stay. And I think that's one important thing that I found out, and that Tim found out, was that you can bring great people in, but if you're bringing them into an environment that's a little bit caustic, it challenges you, and you may have additional turnover. So key is why is this important? Well, if you look at the work that Gallup has done, so this is their most recent report, these are 2 things that were really quite startling for us, was that if you look at this, is about 33% of employees, and this is worldwide, are engaged in their work, versus if you look at the best organizations, the one that have the lowest turnover, highest level of engagement, that's about 70%. So you can tell the level of performance of the organization, specifically the engagement of the employees, right? And the other thing that Gallup has told us is 87% of the worldwide employees are really not engaged in work, as we saw on the previous one. But the interesting thing is that companies that have a highly engaged workforce really outperform their peers. So paying attention to engagement is important to the bottom line, not just because it's the right thing to do. Interview the employees. 21% of the employees say that that they strongly agree their performance is being managed in such a way. The other, whatever it is, 79% pretty much say, hey, I'm not being managed the way that I want or need. So bottom line is if we look at actively engaged and disengaged employees, pay attention to the green, that what happens is pretty much over time, the engaged employees' engagement drops off if you don't start doing some of the things that we've learned from our leadership strategy. So if you pay attention to that and you make your managers more approachable, right, where they want to have the conversations, you can raise your employee engagement. And we talk about doing this, but how do you do this? So one of the reasons you really want to do this is that if you can create this level of engagement, this communication, this kind of sense of belonging, employees are 87% less likely to leave your organization. And that should be important to you, whether you're an HR or any kind of manager. Because as we learned from our first slide, that for the example we used, it's costing them about $20,000 to $25,000 per person for each person they have to replace. So here's our 5 recommendations. The first thing is, research shows us, our research is the number one thing that you can do is do communication. It's the best lever. More is better. Over communicating. Never seen an organization that has said that you're communicating with us too much. It's really defines great leadership. Leaders that are viewed very highly have great communications. And this is also kind of the foundation of what we do with our clients, what we call our Leadership Academy that we're delivering for many, many organizations. That's the first thing. If you do nothing else.
I just want to mention a little bit, it's not just communication in terms of the amount of information, but the approach to communication.
Yes.
We're creating an environment where people feel like they can have those conversations.
Thanks, Tim. And the second thing is alignment. And this is really your second level. And there's really two types of alignment that you can do. One is kind of aligning the goals and purpose, right? If you read Daniel Pink's work, a great book called Drive, it's really getting people to understand why they are at work, what their purpose is. And then the second type of alignment is really alignment with their job motivators, of things that truly engage them so that they're excited to come into work. We have some assessments that will do that. We also have lots and lots of experience of how you can raise that alignment. So that's our second recommendation. And the third recommendation is development. Once again, even if you look at Dan Pink's material in Drive, he talks about the importance of mastery. And if you look at generations, particularly millennials, this is very, very important for millennials, once again, to keep them engaged and employed, right? So they want to be learning, they want to be growing. And if you do that, you've got a higher probability that they will stay. So paying a little attention to them, giving them opportunities, letting them learn so that they can see that they can move up in an organization or move to different opportunities is fantastic. The fourth one is connectedness, right? Also very important to millennials. This is kind of the sense of belonging. It's also making them resources for each other, making sure that they feel comfortable to talk to the person next to them or go to the other organization. And what we used to call this at Intel, when I worked at Intel for 18 years, was we used to call this great place to work. That we created this environment that people wanted to come to work. We worked together. We were respectful. We appreciated the other people and valued them. And what the bottom line is we gave our discretionary time. So at 5 o'clock, it was difficult to find any parking lot in the company that still wasn't full. And that's a good indication that that's a great place to work. And to close is really feedback and accountability. This is probably the hardest to do, particularly on a regular basis. If you do number 1 through 4, communication, alignment, development, and connectiveness, providing feedback and holding people accountable is easy to do. If you don't pay attention to there, then you end up having to deliver sometimes difficult feedback, and holding them accountable feels like a lose-lose situation. So the key is to be consistent, to be clear, provide the feedback on a regular basis using advice and encouragement of the things that we teach in our leadership programs. I think I have gotten right on time, so we still have 5 minutes left for any kind of questions that might be out there.
What you have said is extremely valuable. And it's the whole behavioral thing that kind of gets us into trouble on interviews. I don't know if I have the right questions that I'm asking, but culture to us is very important. And sometimes in interviews, I might not have the right questions to, come up with how they're going to fit in our culture. They may be incredibly bright and successful in their own right, but they don't fit here. And it's all, for me, it's difficult getting through on the behavioral side.
Yeah, and what we've found is that if you do some of the assessments, the behavioral assessments that we use in the benchmarking process, what you'll see, as Tim had pointed out earlier, you'll see the ones that kind of fit in the banding of what you would expect. And then you'll also see the ones that fall way outside. And that'll give you an idea. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad fit for you. What it means is that you need to use the second level of questions that our reports will provide to you if you have someone that's particularly low or particularly high.
Yeah, and I think I'd build on that by, one of the things that you can do is just look at your best performers. Look at the people that really fit in the organization and try to determine what is it about those people that's allowing them to be such a great fit that you instantly say, they're a good add to our organization. And when I worked at Allied Signal, we used to work with recruiters, and we sort of had this picture of what an Allied Signal employee looked like in terms of somebody who would fit into that culture versus somebody that wouldn't. So it might be a good place to start is having some conversation with your best performers saying, what is it that makes you feel like you fit in this culture?
Anita, I just wanted to see if you had anything for us to ask with regard to what we've presented?
I don't think so. Not at this time. I know we're going to be having other discussions really soon on other stuff. So I'm sure I'm kind of I like to digest things and then come up with questions as soon as we.
Anita works for a company that we've been working with. So it was a nice surprise to see her show up this morning. So a lot of the things, hopefully, that you've seen in our presentation are things that you've already been doing with the Leadership Academy as well.
Yes.
Where do I go to find more information?
So thank you for the lead-in. So,
Oh, sorry.
So I just happen to have a slide for that. So actually, our next webinar is going to be on the 25th. You'll get an invitation, a personal invitation for that. And if you send a note to us at attrition@magnaleadership.com, or you can call our office line here at 623-252-2389, you'll be able to get to us. So it's attrition@magnaleadership, or anything. You can send it to Kevin@magnaleadership.com or Tim@magnaleadership.com, and you'll be able to get to us. Or we really encourage you to just call us on our office number, 623-252-2389, and we'll be glad to give you the next level of detail. Completely free, no sales pitch. We really want to just help organizations get better.
Good. Perfect. Thank you.
I see that we're at the bottom of the hour. I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to call in. Hopefully there's something useful. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to talking to you.
No, have a great day. Thanks for joining, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Okay.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.